Absolutely love your book. It was one of our book club books for Dr. Chafee's book club, which I am a part of. We had an excellent time discussing the content of the book. Everybody found it very captivating and riveting, and we had some really, really good discussions around there. And you were kind enough to also appear and answer questions from that group of lovely people. The first question that I think everybody has for you is always the same. How did you land on such a provocative title? It is such a good title.
That's yours.
Well, there's truth to the title, but originally it was a friend who came up with the title. I was telling him about studies that I'd come across, which showed that the lower the amount of vitamin B12 in your diet, the more your brain shrinks with age. And at the other end of the spectrum, there are studies on babies who've been breastfed by vegan or vegetarian mothers who actually can suffer severe brain atrophy sometimes. And this brain atrophy can be completely reversed if you administer vitamin B12, but only if it's done in time within the first 6 to 12 months of life. So there's complete truth to the title of the book. That's the first half of the title. And the second half is Ali's remit. And that's true as well. I'll let her tell you about it when we come to that.
Yes, John. So it's how cows reverse climate change. And so the latter part of the book is about farming and the environment, and one part of that is the claim that cows cause climate change by emitting methane, why that isn't true, and also on the other side of things, why crop farming is actually much more damaging to the planet in so many ways.
Yeah. So we didn't want to have so two provocative parts of the title. We we didn't want to have just a diet book. I mean, so many times you read stories in the media, online, and so on. I mean, diet books all over the place that tell you about, claim these health benefits or whatever, but they don't pay any attention to how that food is farmed. And likewise, you see farming studies or environmental studies about farming that make claims that this is good or this is bad, but don't really appreciate how those choices that you might make in farming would then feed through into diet. So we wanted to have a book that addressed both sides of that equation.
Well, you do such a great job in capturing that. So I'm glad that was the goal, and it certainly came through in the book. I was telling you offline that I recently got back from Dave Feldman's conference that he hosts in Las Vegas, Nevada, the COSI 2025 conference, where we reviewed some of the latest research on cholesterol and the metabolic psychiatry that's on the rise, which is great. And as part of the conference, he hosted a debate that went on for an hour and 20 minutes, I believe, between Dr. Peter Ballerstedt, who we've hosted plenty of times on the show, and a vegan. And tons of respect to the vegan who showed up to a largely pro, carnivore type audience to be able to talk and try to make counterpoints. And I tried to be as open-minded as possible to listen to him and the points that he was making. But it's so hard to defend veganism. They just end up like running in circles and confusing different things and bringing up different numbers that don't really seem logically that accurate. And it feels like we spend so much time defending, the raising of cattle and the consumption of animals in our diets, where what you guys do in the book so well is you actually attack the other side and say, like, well, maybe we should go on the offensive and say how bad eating plants is and how bad raising plants is. And I think you guys capture that so very well. So kudos there to be able to do that.
Great.
I'd say that the main aims of the book are to present correct evidence-based information to help people. The aim is not to offend.
Sure. You guys make that point early on in the book to say, like, we're not picking on vegans. We chose the title to be provocative. We have evidence that we're going to present, and it's pretty strong evidence, but it's not an attack on the way that anybody wants to approach life and eat whatever they want, which I really appreciate as well. Before we get into some of the content of the book, it strikes me that the three of you must have had three pretty amazing stories. You also write about that in the book. Can you tell us each briefly how you kind of arrived at where you are today and how you look at plant-based diets versus animal-based diets?
Well, I've been passionate about food, diet, and health ever since I was a teenager. I've been looking into different diets for many decades. But this book actually started with a patient that I saw who'd come to see me because she'd been found to have a high blood cholesterol level. And the standard thinking, obviously, was to start her on treatment for it, which she declined. And she said to me she would bring a book to tell me why she was declining treatment. That book was a book by Gary Taubes, which in the UK is called The Diet Delusion, and in America it's called Good Calorie, Bad Calorie. And it was really that book that set me on my research into nutrition in detail. I came across some other books which also helped me get to where I am. One called Food and Western Disease by Professor Staffan Lindeberg, and then finding out about keto diets and how they're useful in treating epilepsy. And then I came across some researchers in Hungary, Sophia Clemens, who runs the Paleomedicina Clinic, and she advocates something called the paleo keto diet for her patients, which she's been using for 10 to 15 years now, actually, in more than 10,000 patients, very successfully. And the diet that we advocate in the book, which is called the Sapiens diet, is based on that, on the paleo keto diet. And we think it's the healthiest diet for people and also for the planet.
Yeah. Ali, do you want to
go? Yes, okay. So when I began work as an agricultural advisor, I was living in the east of England, which is our main crop growing area. And having studied agriculture as general agriculture and livestock and everything, I found myself having to work with arable farming and give agronomic advice, and I was quite appalled really at the intensive continuous cropping and what that involves in terms of, particularly in terms of pesticides and the eradication of habitat and wildlife really, and only the livestock around the edges on the land that couldn't be cropped, suckler cows, beef cows, and sheep, seem to be doing anything beneficial to help the environment and put things back a bit. But I believed all the advice that we've been given over the years, that we should all eat 5 a day in fruit and vegetables and more and more and more, and whole grains and all this sort of thing. And then my health began to deteriorate when I was about 40. I started gaining a lot of weight and couldn't do anything about that. And I started developing a few other health issues, like a skin complaint called rosacea. And then in, I think it was about 2020, I'd been looking into more stuff on diet and health and started doing a ketogenic diet, but more of a kind of Mediterranean style ketogenic diet using olive oil and coconut oil and lots of fruit and vegetables, but with fish and I've always eaten meat, mainly beef and lamb, but what we're told is that we shouldn't. And my health, I started to lose weight, but then through my work, I met Anita, and we had a long chat, and I was very relieved to hear that actually we are completely carnivore animals, and it was perfectly okay just to eat meat and fat, which I've always loved eating fatty meat. So it was just a complete relief not to have to eat fruit that I didn't like. And overnight, I would say within the first 2 weeks, lots of different health issues started to resolve, including the skin issues. I continued to lose weight. Acid reflux disappeared. Within 2 years, I'd corrected, I'd developed Barrett's esophagus, damage to the cells of the esophagus as a result of acid reflux, and that resolved by the next time I had a checkup. So lots of benefits, and just in terms of mental health and everything, massive benefits. So completely convinced, and I haven't looked back.
And for me, yeah, a bit like Ali, I mean, until 3 years ago, I believe the food guidelines that we're told in the UK. Ali's mentioned some of them, you know, at least 5 a day of fruit and veg, eat lots of wholemeal grains, limit your consumption of red meat. And then Anita suggested, well, you know, it'd be better to cut out the grains, for example, which I did. So every morning, my typical breakfast was, you know, breakfast cereal with fruit and veg and maybe some honey and so on top. A typical lunch would always be wholemeal bread sandwiches and an evening meal of meat and veg and so on. I cut out the grains, and although I didn't consider myself overweight, I lost, I would say 2 or 3 inches around the waist. So gone down a size in my jeans, and just felt, you know, my gut health just felt so much better. And then likewise, you know, 5 a day, don't pay any attention to that now. And really, and like Ali said, really enjoy eating. I mean, the fantastic meat that we grow here, pasture raised meat, beef and lamb and so on, absolutely gorgeous.